I haven't spoken very much about the practice in terms of the Mahāsatipaṭṭhāna Sutta, so I will say a little bit in terms of that today. We speak every day, we recite the Sutta every day, the introductory outline of the Sutta, the Odesa, one who Kaye Kayanupasi Viharati Atapi Sampajano Satima Vinaya Loke Abeja Domanasan. That a bhikkhu, one who practices, how does one practice? First of all, Katame Chataro, what are the practices that we call the four foundations of mindfulness? In this teaching, a monk dwells observing the body in the body, ardent, clearly comprehending and mindful. And he uproots the craving and sorrow in this body called the world, in this being called the world. Also in, again, observing feeling in the feeling. A bhikkhu dwells observing feeling, the feeling in the feelings, or feeling as feeling, ardent, clearly comprehending and mindful. The bhikkhu dwells observing the consciousness as consciousness, ardent, clearly comprehending and mindful. One observes the arising Dhamma as it is, as Dhamma, ardent, clearly comprehending and mindful. So the Sutta instructs us to observe. This word for observation is observation of the body, Kayanupasana. We have observation of Vedananupasana. These are I'm just mentioning the Pali words. Chittanupasana, Dhammanupasana. So these are the practices. We try to develop observation of these four kinds of objects. I should say repeated observation of these four kinds of objects that can arise in our being. So we have to observe what really is there as it is. And so when the abdomen rises, when it falls, when we lift, move, place the foot, whatever arising object of the body, of kaya, is apparent, we observe that with steadfast mindfulness, with repeated observation. Whatever feeling arises, good, bad, neutral, when it becomes apparent, we observe it with Vedananupasana. So we try to be aware of the arising feeling. The feelings may be pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. When there's thinking, planning, the clean mind, the defiled mind, and so on, we observe that when this becomes apparent. This is Chittanupasana, Satipatthāna. And whenever there is seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, these are called general objects or dhammas. And this is observing these is classified as Dhammanupasana Satipatthāna, or repeated observation of Dhamma, the foundation of, how should I say? So these are the four types of things that we can encounter in ourselves, four big classifications of things. So in this Pali, the Buddha described one who is practicing these four types of observation, Kayanupasana, Vedananupasana, Chittanupasana, Dhammanupasana, observing the prominent object, observing the arising object. The person who is observing these must be ardent, clearly comprehending, and mindful. He uses these three words, Atapi Sampajano Satima. Atapi means that one is ardent, basically. Satima means one has sati. Sampajano means that one is clearly comprehending. So these are the four I just say that. These three describe what one needs to do in order to be able to observe effectively with this practice. So the first thing that is needed for this repeated observation called anupassana in the Pali is the quality of ardent effort. The word atapi is used first.
Ce qu'il nous faudra pour observer ainsi de façon répétée ces quatre bases, observer de façon répétée ces anupassana en pali, il faudra tout d'abord atapi, l'effort ardent.
So, for example, we apply our mind to observe the object in our body. Actually, I should describe first how these three qualities are seen in the practice of having ardent energy, of having clear comprehension, and having mindfulness. So, for example, when the rising arises, we apply this ardent effort so that sati will stick to the object every time it arises. And this is what is called ardent energy or atapa virya. So one can't be slow about it or lax. One has to have ardency in this, and it's very beneficial. It's not worthy. It's not worthless. So it is quite praiseworthy to have this type of effort. And one who possesses this atapa, this type of ardent energy, is called in Pali atapi, or we just say ardent in both English and French. So although atapa and virya both mean effort, we often hear the word virya or virya, but this word atapa also means virya. And since virya is very often used, the question is, well, why did the Buddha use this word atapi? And it is because the literal meaning is to heat things up and make them evaporate, which is what happens to the kilesas when we use our energy. It makes the kilesas dry up. The Buddha said that there are 4 kinds of effort to be made. And the first of these is the effort to dispel unwholesomeness so that it doesn't arise again. It is also the effort to keep unwholesomeness that hasn't arisen from arising, to prevent it. It is also the effort to create a clean, wholesome mind, which wasn't there to begin with, to create this thing. And also the effort to make the clean mind stronger, better, day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, moment by moment. We have to make this wholesome mind increase. So these 4 things, dispelling unwholesomeness, keeping unarisen unwholesomeness from arising, creating the clean, wholesome mind, and making this wholesome mind increase, become well developed. This can only happen if there is courageous effort, which is called in Pali virya. And this is the most important part involved in dispelling unwholesomeness and developing wholesomeness. There are 3 parts to this virya or effort. And the first is called initial effort, or I'll just give you the Pali words too, aramba dhatu. And the second is called persistent effort, or stepped up effort, nekama dhatu. And the third is the type of effort that, culminating effort, you could say. It goes up stage by stage until one finally reaches one's goal. And that is called in Pali parakama dhatu. So the yogi needs to have these 3 stages of effort in order to come to the end of the path. So I want to speak about these 3 stages of effort, how they're explained in the text, and how they happen practically. So initially, we don't have this type of effort. We have to start it. We have to create it. For the most part, the way people live is that 24 hours a day, they don't do anything, except for when people are asleep. 24 hours a day, people don't do anything to prevent unwholesomeness from arising in their mind. They just let the mind go. Mostly people do this. And without any effort to stop the defilements, the factors of mind which are unwholesome, one can always feel the heat from these. And this type of mind is unclean. The mind that is involved with greed, the mind that is involved with hatred, with delusion. These things make the mind hot. And mostly people don't know, how does this happen? How do these emotions or mind states arise? If we knew that the mind was unclean or hot, then one would surely search for a method to prevent this. But because people don't know what the state of their mind is for the most part, they don't search for a method. So except for the time when one is asleep, one is just wasting one's time, because one doesn't know the state of the mind, that it's unclean, and also, and therefore one doesn't search for a method to prevent unwholesomeness. So therefore one doesn't practice any type of method for doing this. Because one isn't aware of tendencies like greed or anger or delusion, doesn't know how to control them, then people act on them. And that causes us suffering eventually. So most of the time we're involved, people who don't have any training for their mind are involved in unwholesome tendencies. And although there's wholesomeness arising, it's not very strong. It's quite weak. So the Buddha saw that because of this, because the unwholesomeness in people's minds is strong, beings suffer. This is the path of suffering. What happens when our minds are unwholesome and then actions take place. So this path of suffering that is caused by unwholesomeness, we have to slowly close this off with sila, with observing morality. So the Buddha taught that this is a clean path that brings good results. And the Buddha said to make effort in keeping sila. So virya is very important for us. So especially when we are practicing Satipatthāna, the synonym for virya, atapa, the word the Buddha used, this ardent energy, it means that one can't even be a little bit lax. One can't cling or grasp onto things, with greed, not even a little bit. And it shows that one has to be always active, alert, and vigilant. So at first one has to create this effort, to make it happen in the first place. And this effort that we make at the start, that is called initial effort, or launching effort, aramba dhatu, the effort that we take to come to a meditation center, to put down our other activities and come here, to take time, to spend our money, to take the trip here and so on. And then the effort to learn the practice and to apply it day by day. So this is our initial effort, the initial effort that we make. So when we start our practice, although there are 4 types of things, kaya, body, vedana, feelings, good, bad, neutral, chitta, the consciousness, and Dhamma, these general objects such as seeing, hearing, smelling, and so on, we need to start with what is obvious. And what is obvious among these four is kaya. The physical stuff is more obvious than the other three, feeling, consciousness, or dhammas. So we have to start with kaya. And within kaya, I think I mentioned previously that the four basic building blocks of matter, of the body, of our body, of anything physical, are the four great elements of earth, air, water, and temperature. Or sometimes this is called the fire element. These four things make up every particle of matter. So among these four elements, which do you think will be easiest to see? The earth element, which is hardness, softness. The element of temperature, which is heat or cold, warmth. The element of water, which is cohesion, or being solid, or flowing. Or the element of air, which manifests as movement, or stiffness, or tension, or vibration.
Yeah.
Right, air.
Yeah.
Air is the easiest to observe. The air element, because every time we move, this is involved and it is prominent. So we start with watching the air element. We watch things like the rising, the falling, lifting, moving, placing. And we tell the yogis that, in their daily activities to keep their mind on changes in posture, or when they're reaching, touching. All the movements of the body happen because there's air. When someone has a stroke in Burmese, they say the person's air has been cut off. They can't move anymore. I don't know how they say in French, but that's what they think. So air is what is easiest to see. So we start with things like rising and falling. If we want our practice of meditation, Kayanupassana, Vedanupassana, Cetanupassana, Dhammanupassana, if we want this repeated observation that is called anupassana to occur, then if we want to be able to observe repeatedly every arising object, what we have to do is apply ardent energy. We have to do that. And that application of energy is very important. So in our body, it's like a large field of observation, and within that there are objects arising, new objects arising all the time. So there's many, although all four of these things, Kaya, Vedana, Chitta, Dhamma, all these four things are happening, arising in our body. While we sit here, hearing happens. When we sit in the Dhamma hall, even though our eyes are closed, there's still hearing, there's still touching happening. There's feeling, but the obvious thing to watch is Kaya. So we try to get our mind to this body, starting with watching the rising and the falling. We try to catch that as soon as it happens, and that needs ardent energy. So in making ardent effort, one can't be sluggish or slow about it, not even a little bit. One can't slow oneself down. One has to always be brisk. And if one has this type of virya or effort, it protects one from misery which can arise due to intense laziness that we may be accustomed to. You don't need to say that. So it protects us by not giving intense laziness, a chance to arise. And the Buddha talked about that. He said that one who has let their effort drop, who is sluggish, dwells in misery. That means when they walk, it's miserable. When they stand, there's also misery. Sitting is misery. Lying down is misery. Movements, starting with bending and stretching, are also misery. So what does this mean to dwell in misery? What is it to be miserable? The Buddha said, "Woke no akusalehi dhamehi," which means that one dwells enmeshed in unwholesome dhammas. So that means that the transgressive defilements, the unwholesome acts or speech that we do, which cause our life to become base or low, which degrade us, these can arise. The obsessive defilements that can arise in the mind, called pariyotana kilesas, these are also happening in the mind. And then there are dormant defilements, called anusaya kilesas, that have the potential to arise. They haven't arisen yet, but they can, if the causes are there. So if one is lazy, then one is just enmeshed in this unwholesomeness, which is the opposite of clean and wholesome behavior. So, and this is the way most people ordinarily live this way. So not knowing this, people don't look for a method to make their mind clean, to make their physical, verbal, and mental behavior clean, or to make themselves a good person. So such people are really to be pitied. They don't have compassion for themselves. People who have compassion for themselves, for the world around them, and who have intelligence, surely come to search for a method for fixing their life, for doing what needs to be done to make one's life civilized. And such people know that they can't rely on angels to save us. It is also not realistic to think that a creator will take responsibility for everything we do. So this idea that whatever humans do, good or bad, it's not realistic to think that whatever humans do, good or bad, a creator will take the responsibility for it. There's no sense of what one does, good or bad, one will either enjoy or suffer oneself. That is not at all involved in when people think that the creator takes responsibility for everything. So such a thing is not realistic. And one has to look for a method with which one can make one's life civilized. So because the Buddha searched for a method and practiced it, he was able to overcome all the defilements in himself, all the ones that manifest in action or speech, the ones that boil in the mind, and the ones that lay dormant. And he taught the method of sila, samadhi, and panya. He taught these three, morality, concentration, and wisdom, for overcoming these three grades of mental defilements. And he said, practice it and see. Practice it meticulously. You will surely come to know for yourself. So when we practice like this, at the start it's as though we have to plant this effort. We have to start it. So when we make effort like this, the results haven't come yet. And how can any result come right at the start, come immediately? So now, just at the start of work, one should understand the two major types of meditation that there are. So I will explain about those. So these two methods of meditation, first of all, there is samatha, which is putting the mind on a single object, a fixed object, and developing concentration. And the second is the method of vipassana. Putting one's mind on a single object to make the mind calm. That's the literal meaning of samatha, that it makes the mind calm. And the other is a method of vipassana, which is to observe every arising object of mind and matter that arise in one's body. So when we practice samatha, it's easy to get good feelings. That's what comes first when we practice samatha, as people who practice it know. Okay, that the first thing that arises when you still the obstacles to concentration, when you overcome these, there's joy, and there's tranquility, and there's happiness or sense of well-being, called sukha. So this is what arises first in the practice of samatha. On the other hand, for people who practice vipassana, it is easy to get discomfort or suffering. Because when one has quieted these obstacles, we still create a calm, still mind, where the obstacles to concentration are overcome, and the mind becomes clean. When the mind becomes clean, feeling arises, Vedana, and we have aches and pains and stiffness and hardness that occur all over the place. And it is said, for Vipassana practitioners, it's easy for suffering to occur. And this is really in the text. So at the start of our practice, because our effort gains momentum, then discomfort arises. And people who lack courage, they shift, or they change their position in various ways. They stretch their back. And so if we do this, changing and shifting around at the stage where discomfort is arising like this, one won't get over this stage very quickly. And it shows that one doesn't have much patience if one does this. So sitting for an hour means that one should use one's determination not to move before the hour is up. To this date, no one has died from meditation practice. You have to have determination. So when there's discomfort, then one wants to be comfortable, one wants to change one's posture, and that can happen. But if one is going to shift every time there is discomfort, then samadhi, concentration, won't arise. So at this time, what we need is the second stage of effort. We've already made the first stage, and now we need the second stage, which is persistent effort, or nekkhamma dhatu. And especially if pain has arisen, one needs to boost the level of one's energy to get the upper hand over it, as one yogi reported about today. One has to boost one's energy instead of backing off. So when one boosts one's energy, then one develops wholesome qualities. So we have to have endurance to face pain. And that kind of effort is called persistent effort, or nekkhamma dhatu. Without persistent effort, one won't go forward in the practice, despite spending a lot of time at it. So when there are difficulties like pain, one has to just surrender to the practice and to not have any consideration for one's life and limb. This is a helpful attitude to have in the face of pain. So what happens when people feel pain is that there is contact with an object, and this contact, something like extreme hardness, for example. This is a bad type of contact. That's the only way I can say it. This extreme hardness, extreme heat, extreme cold, these are all examples of disagreeable tangible objects, I should say. Extreme stiffness, extreme tension, these are all difficult, unpleasant, disagreeable, tangible objects. And when we experience contact with them, then uncomfortable feeling, Vedana, arises. Due to contact with the object, there's the discomfort, which is pain or an ache or numbness. So it's a matter of, due to this contact, bad contact, there's a feeling of discomfort. And this is the true nature of mind and matter. Vedana is mind and the tangible object is matter. So this feeling that arises, which is true nature, can be the cause for craving. It is said, people who study the cycle of dependent origination know that Vedana paccaya tanha, that feeling causes craving. So that, I'll stop there and let you catch up. Vedana paccaya tanha means that due to the arising feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, craving or tanha can occurs, I should say. Just like dissatisfaction or anger can arise for those who do not have patience, so too craving can occur. Because it is said, I'll just say the Pali quickly, it is said, dukhi sukhan patiyati. That means that one who encounters unpleasant feelings wishes for happiness. So it would be good. It would be good if these feelings in my body would go away. And this is what is meant by tanha arises because of feeling. One has, if one doesn't observe the feeling, one has the wish. It would be good if they would arise, the good feelings. So also, when one's practice is comfortable, pleasant feelings arise. And it is said, sukhi biopi echati. When one's experience is pleasant, one wants more. So this is also an example of tanha. One takes pleasure in the pleasant feelings, and one wants more of them. So this is craving also. And also, at times when the practice is calm and quiet, which happens at the higher stages of practice, there are neutral feelings that are neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And we can also crave these because they're not uncomfortable. So people have to be very careful no matter what stage of the practice they are at, because craving occurs regardless of the type of feeling. Craving can occur because of discomfort that yogis are struggling with at the start of the practice. It occurs when they start to get pleasant feelings, when their practice becomes better. And it occurs when one is at the higher stages of the practice, when one's feelings are neutral. There can be craving for these. So craving or tanha is that which takes pleasure in things. And it arises due to Vedana, due to these three forms of feeling. So in whom does this happen? In whom does this tanha or craving arise? It arises in those who don't observe the feeling, whether it is good, bad, or neutral, which is arising in their body when it happens. When the feeling arises, when it happens, it must be observed with courage and determination. So people who don't maintain determined, courageous effort, this is what happens when feeling arises. So when feeling arises, and one doesn't maintain a determined, courageous effort, then kilesas, the mental defilements, enter one's mind in a swarm. And one wants to back off in the case of observing discomfort. So this is called laziness, being lazy. And at this time, greed and hatred, anger and delusion all tangle one up. When there's uncomfortable feelings, when one notes in order to get rid of them, that is craving. And when one notes with dissatisfaction about them, that is anger. And not knowing the arising object as it is ignorance. So we have all three types of kilesas that have arisen in the moment of not noting. So this dislikable, tangible object that is arising, that thing that is bad, creating bad contact, is simply the truth of suffering. And wanting something good when we experience something unpleasant is a cause for suffering, is the cause of dukkha. So if we examine what is the cause of craving, that is tanha, which arises, is due to the dukkha. Tanha arises, and tanha is the cause of suffering. So the cause of this craving is that one doesn't note and know, one does not observe the arising uncomfortable feeling with determination. And if one observes I'm skipping something. So because of not observing, then craving arises in our body. Craving arises regarding our body. If one observes this craving, tanha doesn't arise. That's the first step. We observe, and the tanha doesn't arise. If we observe many times, courageous effort arises. Later, sati or mindfulness arises. From that, samadhi arises on its own. If sati is present, samadhi is definitely going to occur. So when one observes this arising discomfort with determination, virya, courageous effort arises. Because of that, sati sticks with the arising object, that is the feeling. And because sati stays with the object, later the mind becomes collected, samadhi follows. So in this way, the three parts of the samadhi group of the path are present. And then with the next noting, there's another moment of effort, mindfulness, and concentration. So if one can note like this every second, one time every second, even every other second, there will be 30 times in a minute. So this is the clean, wholesome mind that is arising together with effort, with mindfulness, and with concentration. So this is what we are doing. We are trying to develop this bhavana mind, this clean, wholesome mind. And we need to try to make this keen and strong. The question arises, why do we have to observe whatever arises in our body, good or bad? That's the question. And the answer is... Okay, does anybody have an answer for that? We need to develop equanimity. But we have more that we want to do, which is, the Buddha said that whatever mind or matter arises in our being, whether good or bad, what is it? Do people remember what it's called? It's the truth of suffering. Okay? And the dukkha satcha. So when this dukkha satcha, the truth of suffering, arises, we have to observe it as we are now, with the practice of Satipatthāna, with diligent effort and steadfast sati. The mind needs to be collected on the object, because if one doesn't do this, there will be ignorance. And that is ignorance of the truth of suffering. So knowledge won't arise. And knowledge is what we want to know the truth of suffering. This is how we are working. We want to know the truth of suffering, so it won't arise if we don't observe everything that happens, whether it's good or bad. Because of not observing, there is ignorance of suffering, and so we won't know the presently arising object. So the first step is to observe the arising uncomfortable feeling with courage. And after that, because of that effort, later, sati will start to stick to the object. And the mind will become collected on the object. So after that, one has to build energy. When one gains energy, one will come to know this truth of suffering. That is, one will know the stiffness, one will know the tightness, one will know pain, one will know discomfort. And this is knowledge regarding the truth of suffering. So it is said, not noting, not knowing. Kilesas come in, but when we note and know, kilesas come clean. It's definite that when we keep on observing, the mind will become clean. One has to observe each arising like this, so that laziness doesn't enter the mind, and so that the mind doesn't become scattered. So when one can observe the object right when it arises, even though one doesn't gain knowledge yet, even though knowledge has not yet arisen, because we've applied the effort regarding the present object, then laziness doesn't come in. And when sati stays with the object, then kilesas can't get in. They can't get into the mind stream, because sati acts like a blockade for kilesas. So it's very good to have the protection of sati or mindfulness, because when the mind is protected by this, then the obstacle to concentration, which is kama chanda nivarana, the obstacle of sense desire, can't arise. And the obstacle called vyavara nivarana, the obstacle of dissatisfaction, anger, disappointment, this also can't arise. And because of making effort to observe the object, sati sticks to the object and the mind becomes collected. And because of this collectedness of the mind, there's no restlessness, there's no udicca. There also won't be any regret and remorse regarding things done in the past. That is called kukucca. And because we're making effort to begin with, there won't be any sloth and torpor, any sleepiness or sluggishness. This is called tinamita. So this is very good to sati. Sati prevents all these obstacles from coming in. I think you can forget the last line that I said. So because of the effort, sati develops and brings samadhi with it. So the mind becomes concentrated on the object. The obstacles to concentration are eliminated, are overcome. So that has to be done first. And when the mind is able to stay with the object, connecting with it exactly, then the mind becomes definite about what object has been observed. So when the mind becomes definite, because of meeting the object, coming face to face with the object and meeting it exactly, then when the mind encounters stiffness, the mind knows it. It knows the stiffness. When it encounters vibration or an unpleasant feeling, one knows the vibration or the unpleasant feeling, and so on. So one becomes sure about what it is that one has observed. And at this time the mind is clean. And so with each time we note, the clean mind arises. And when this happens again and again and again, for 10 notings, that's 10 occurrences of the clean mind. 60 notings, that's 60 minutes, 60 times. In 5 minutes, 300. So if we have 300 clean mind, 300 occurrences of the clean mind every 5 minutes, then that adds up to a lot. And this is what is called developing the mind, or bhavana. This bhavana mind that we first had to create is being reproduced again and again and again, becoming stronger and stronger. So this is very satisfying, and when we experience this, we won't want the things that we normally want. We won't want to want to see, want to smell, want to hear, taste, touch, and think good things. So for this reason, because this is very good, the Buddha said that the one who has developed their energy in this way, arata viryo cha ko bekave sukhang viharati, the one who has developed their energy dwells happily. The one who possesses this energy that has developed from one stage to the next, for that person there's virya, sati, and samadhi. And that person dwells happily. They're happy when walking, happy when standing, sitting, lying down. So what is the happiness that is experienced at that time? It is the happiness of seclusion from akusala, from the defilements, from kilesas. So one is no longer mixed up with unwholesomeness, and this is peaceful. So, although there is more that I had to say, I'm going to stop here and just say that I hope everyone will persist in their practice to overcome the difficulties and to observe feeling no matter what stage they are in the practice, because these feeling causes craving whenever it's not observed. So we have to overcome this. And if with persistent effort we can do it. So please try. Tomorrow I'm going to talk. Tomorrow is probably my last talk. So if I give a talk tomorrow, I will talk about who is it that can realize Nibbana.